National Railway Museum of Bragança. Information about the building. Welcome to the National Railway Museum of Bragança. This text was created within the project Culture for All Bragança. Reference NORTE 07 4230 FSE 000058, financed by the European Social Fund of the Municipality of Bragança. The project was conducted by the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança. Location: the Railway Museum is located near what was once the city's central avenue, Avenue João da Cruz. It is on this avenue that the old train station is located. Now the station holds the ticket offices for bus transport companies and a cafeteria with a terrace. The museum is located at Rua da Estação, Street of the Station, number 8, and occupies the old locomotive warehouse for the last station in the tour line, which was located in Bragança. In this building, locomotives and wagons were stored and repaired, and the rest of the material used on the railways was stored.
Tour line. The tour line is a narrow-gauge railway connection that linked the Foz do Tour station, on the Douro line, with Bragança. The line is 134 km long and follows the layout of the Tour River Valley from its mouth to Mirandela. It crosses the Trás-os-Montes plateau to Bragança, passing through the highest station in the country, Santa Comba de Rosas, at 849 meters. In 1845, the Companhia das Obras Públicas de Portugal, the Portuguese public works company, was hired for the project to build a railway between Lisbon and the Spanish border. Due to lack of financing, the company did not meet this objective. Subsequently, the political and economic conditions of the country led the government to invest in public works, including the railway. In 1852, the Portuguese Ministry of Public Works, Commerce and Industry was created to manage these investments. During the 1880s, Portugal invested in developing the railway network in some parts of the country. It was in September 1887 that the section between Foz do Tour and Mirandela was inaugurated, in the presence of King D. Luís I. But Bragança was left out of the national railway network, becoming a city isolated in Trás-os-Montes and from the rest of the country. Abilio Bica was a Portuguese jurist and civil governor, and one of the local personalities who tried to use his influence to convince the government to invest in the extension of the Tour line to Bragança. However, his attempt failed due to the political and financial crisis the country was facing at the end of the 19th century and due to the British Ultimatum of 1890. Also known as the Pink Map, the ultimatum consisted of the threat that the United Kingdom made to Portugal so that it would withdraw from the territories between Angola and Mozambique and give up its territorial ambitions. As King D. Carlos immediately gave in to the British threat, the monarchy was severely criticized and patriotic sentiments strengthened. In 1899, Alvino Brito was Minister of Public Works and tried to restart the construction of railway lines in Portugal through the creation of a specific law. Following the approval of the law, priority was given to a number of railway lines, including the extension of the line from Mirandela to Bragança. The second stage of construction of the line from Tour to Bragança was then in the hands of João da Cruz, a businessman from humble origins who made his fortune in Brazil and returned to Portugal. Upon returning, he met the brothers Abilio and José Bica, who studied in Coimbra. One studied law and the other mathematics and engineering. The brothers were always linked to the railway from Mirandela to Bragança, and they were looking for investors who ended up being João da Cruz. They convinced him to apply for the competition to make this connection, taking advantage of his experience in road construction and other public works. In 1902, João da Cruz was the only applicant for the competition for the construction of the railway from Mirandela to Bragança. He had many difficulties in succeeding because the land was very rugged and forced his team to build trenches and tunnels. Therefore, the line ended up stopping in Santa Comba de Rosas, 20 kilometers from Bragança, due to lack of funds. The National Railway Company terminates the contract with João da Cruz and ends up completing the line. The inauguration took place on December 1, 1906, when the station was still unfinished. Neither João da Cruz nor Abilio Bica attended the inauguration of the line, and José Bica ended up dying before seeing the connection completed. It is curious that it was also in this year, 1906, that the railway line reached Vila Real de Santo Antonio, in the Algarve. Between the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, Portugal began to invest in the construction of national roads, at the time called Royal Roads. This investment continued during the Estado Novo, new state, the name given to the dictatorship period, and culminated with the construction of the first highway in 1944, and subsequently its reinforcement during the period of democracy after 1974. For these reasons, over the decades, freight transport companies began to invest in the use of roads. At the same time, the new Tour to Bragança line began to be used more for passenger transport. The arrival of modern Alstom diesel-electric locomotives made Tour's landscape attractive to people. Later, steam locomotives were permanently removed from this line. Some interesting facts about this line. After World War II, trains had no arrival time, and delays could last up to 24 hours. In 1955, Series 9300 wagons were put in circulation on the Tuer line, which could not exceed 50 km per hour due to the layout of the line and its lack of maintenance. In 1984, the simplified exploration regime came into force. The plan for the modernization and conversion of Portuguese railways was approved in 1988. These plans determined the closure of railway lines that were considered secondary, that is, lines with reduced traffic. Comboios de Portugal, literally trains of Portugal, operated a 3,600 km network, which was very old. Of them, 2,090 km had never been improved or maintained. This fact harmed service quality and revenue. Therefore, the company's plan was to close 180 stations and stops across the country. The open presidency of Mário Soares in February 1987 took place in the city of Bragança. The president traveled by train between Bragança and the Freixas station on locomotive number 1, that is exhibited in this museum. This trip made headlines throughout the country and, in particular, in the Bragança region. Throughout the route, many citizens gathered at the stops and stations with posters and protests, asking that the train not be taken from them. However, the structure of the line had problems in several sections, such as a lack of crushed stone or gravel used to fill the rails, loose sleepers and poor fixation of the rails, works that should have carried out over the previous 100 years. The problems were aggravated by an accident on December 15, 1991, on the section of the line between Mirandela and Macedo, which caused its closure. Replacement buses were then made available to transport passengers. On December 17, 1991, near the town of Sortes, a train traveling from Macedo de Cavaleiros to Bragança derailed. It fell off a cliff about 50 meters high while carrying 3 passengers. On the section from Carvalhais to Bragança, the trains stopped running. The company announced its definitive closure. The closure was completed in October 1992 with the withdrawal of locomotives and wagons from the Bragança and Macedo de Cavaleiros stations. It was the night of October 13 to 14, 1992, around 11 p.m., when Trains of Portugal began removing the locomotives and wagons using auto cranes to load them, as well as other material. The company had the protection of the GNR and the PSP, the national authorities. That night, telephone communications and local radio frequencies were cut off in the municipalities of Bragança, Vinhais, Macedo de Cavaleiros and Mirandela. Although people demonstrated and tried to prevent the loading of locomotives and wagons, the police protection and preparation that the company put into this operation did not allow any interference. All Alstom locomotives and Neapolitan cars went out of circulation. The Mirandela Metro, a municipal company with a 10% participation of Trains of Portugal, started working to connect Mirandela with the Carvalhais station. The railway to Bragança was operational until 1992, and the remaining sections were closed down in 2008. You can watch news clips and documentaries about these events in the last carriage of the museum.
Museum's history. The National Railway Museum of Bragança belongs to the National Railway Museum Foundation, whose objective is to guarantee the protection and safety of the old museum sections of the Trains of Portugal. The conservation of this historical heritage in Bragança was possible thanks to the shared management protocol, signed between the Foundation and the Bragança City Council in 2007 and carried out in the context of the network of Portuguese railway museums. The museum was built on the Bragança train line. The granite building of the current museum was the Bragança's Museum Centre. This stone building consisted of 2 long wings with 2 gabled or triangular roofs. On the facade there were 2 metal doors that allowed the entrance of locomotives and wagons to be fixed or stored in the building. The railings gave access to this space. On the sides the building had 5 granite pillars and 3 windows that have been preserved in the current museum. In front of the old centre there was a rotating wheel where the locomotives that had to be repaired were placed. In the museum this wheel exhibits the E55 locomotive. This centre was created while the Bragança line was still open and closed down in 2003. It reopened on April 25, 2019 as the Bragança section of the National Railway Museum with new facilities. The old locomotive warehouse was rehabilitated and doubled its size to increase the exhibition area. With the new museum, the municipality of Bragança sought to return Bragança's railway heritage to the local community and to those who visit the city. The museum helps preserve and exhibit pieces that, for more than a century, were used on the railway that connected the city of Bragança with Mirandela and on the Douro line through the Tuer Valley. Through the Douro line, Bragança was connected to Spain, Porto and the rest of the country. The museum brings together 3 locomotives, 4 carriages, rail cars and wagons, and more than 200 pieces that were part of the daily life of the railway employees and passengers of the tour line, from the beginning to the end of the line. These pieces also show the rapid modernization of objects used on Portuguese railway lines. Some of these pieces are, for example, the rails manufactured in Belgium and Germany, which were later used by the locomotives, wagons and railcars that had been built in Germany, Holland, France, the former Yugoslavia, among other countries. For a century, these lines and locomotives had transported goods from the northeast of Trás-os-Montes for export through Portuguese ports and brought in products from all over the world to Trás-os-Montes. We finish the history of the museum with the words of 2 employees interviewed by a local newspaper in 2019 when the new museum was inaugurated. Valdemar Pais was 77 years old in 2019. He was born in Salses, in Bragança. He was the last employee of the old museum centre, where he worked for more than 20 years but was at the service of the CP for more than 45 years. He still remembers the night when Bragança's trains were secretly taken. He said, "They sent us to Lisbon so that we wouldn't tell people that they were coming to get the machines, otherwise people wouldn't let them take them. They shouldn't have let the line close." José Carlos André, then 72 years old, was a conductor. He worked at CP for more than 20 years, 12 of which in Bragança. He considers that the closure of the line was detrimental to the region. He states that, even if it was for tourism purposes, it should never have ended. The landscape was beautiful. There were many students traveling between Mirandela, Macedo, Sendas and Bragança. At that time there was no road transport.
Plan at the end of the Avenue João da Cruz is the building of the old train station in Bragança. It is a stone building with 3 bodies, a central one with 2 floors and 2 side ones with a single floor. In the central body there are 2 high oval doors that give access to the waiting room of the transport companies. These doors are flanked by 2 windows, one on each side. On the upper floor we have a triple window flanked by 2 high windows with balconies. In the center a small shield with the letters CN, standing for National Railway Company, from which a pole with the national flag emerges. At the top of the building, aligned with the roof, a white clock with black hands stopped at 10:02. On the left wall of this central building, there is a bronze plaque with capital letters that reads, Bragança Bus Station, inaugurated by His Excellency the Secretary of State for Transport, Engineer Francisco Manuel Rodrigues de Cibra Ferreira, with Engineer Antonio Jorge Nunes as President of the City Council of Bragança. January 24, 2004. The body on the left also has 2 tall doors interspersed with 4 windows. It gives access to the cafeteria. On the left wall there is a marble plaque with a bronze bust of João da Cruz and the following text in capital letters. João da Cruz Avenue. Tribute to the daring contractor of the construction of the railway line from Mirandela to Bragança, 1929 in Roman numerals. The body on the right of the building maintains the same structure of doors and windows as the left one and corresponds to the place where the ticket offices of the road companies are to be found. Behind the old station we still have 2 railway lines that were maintained in the requalification of this space and where people can walk and sit while waiting for the urban buses that are called stub in Bragança, that is Bragança Urban Transport Service. The stub stops are located next to the old railway tracks towards Rua da Estacão. The museum is aligned with the stub stops. On the left of the museum are the stops where the coaches stop and their respective support spaces, that is, the waiting room, cafeteria, and bathrooms. From here to the museum there is a granite ramp that takes us directly to the entrance of the museum. On the right of the museum there are several small gardens and a children's playground that visitors can enjoy. On the right facade of the museum, you can read the name of the museum in grey capital letters. They are placed on the glass structure. In the old part there are 3 high windows that let in natural light. In the small garden that runs along the right of the museum, 2 important objects are exhibited. On the left the water tap about 2 meters high and, on the right, the old station sign that says attention to trains. Stop, listen, look. Transit on the line is prohibited. Closer to the entrance there is a metal plaque placed on a granite pedestal that says the following. National Railway Museum. Inaugurated on April 25, 2019, by the Mayor of Bragança Hernani Venancio Dias. Municipality of Bragança. Inside the museum there are plaques about these objects with more detailed explanations. You can access the audio narration of these plates and other written materials by means of the QR code made available. The museum has only 1 floor which is divided into 2 parts. The new part entirely made of iron and glass and the old part made of granite. 2 bodies were added to the old museum center, totaling 4 wings. The museum is 48 meters long and 15 meters wide, with an approximate area of 700 meters too, and a height of around 6 meters. Upon entering the museum, we come across the reception, which is a glass box where the museum staff are. The visit begins on the right side, surrounding the locomotives and wagons, counterclockwise. Locomotive number 1 can be accessed, as well as almost all carriages, with the exception of the sanitary car and the first-class carriage. There are no restrictions to touching in this museum. On the walls surrounding the exhibition there are texts with additional explanations, and next to the locomotives, carriages and objects on display, there are plaques with additional information. There are also 2 display cases with more objects that were used in and for the trains. For more detailed information, access the museum visit with audio description available on the project's YouTube channel.
Accessibility resources were created for this project and are available to all visitors. You can access a model of the building and its tactile plan that offer audio description for tactile exploration, easy language and Portuguese Sign Language. You will also be able to access texts in Braille and easy language on paper. Ask staff for help finding or using them. Videos with audio description and easy language were also created in Portuguese, English and Spanish and in Portuguese Sign Language. They are available on the project's YouTube channel. Throughout the exhibition route, the posters and wall texts have a QR code that allows access to their narration in Portuguese, English and Spanish and their translation into Portuguese Sign Language. The videos that are available in the last carriage also have audio description, subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing and subtitling in easy language in Portuguese, English and Spanish and translation into Portuguese Sign Language. All of these resources are available on the project's YouTube channel. Search for Culture for All Bragança and subscribe to our channel. Farewell, thanks for your attention. We hope you enjoyed this journey through the history of the National Railway Museum of Bragança. We are always open to welcome you and hope you will visit us soon. Technical acknowledgements. This text on the National Railway Museum of Bragança was prepared within the project Culture for All Bragança, Norte 07 4230 FSE 000058, financed by the European Social Fund of the Municipality of Bragança. It was carried out by the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança with Claudia Martins's coordination. The voices were from Narakit. Marta Ochoa was in charge of the sound edition.